There is an old joke about a nearsighted man who has lost his keys late at night and is looking for them by the light of a street lamp. Another person comes along and offers to help him look, but asks him, "Are you sure this is where you lost them?" He answers, "No, but this is where the light is." Jill, like the man in the story, was searching for what was missing in her life. Not where there was some hope of finding it, but where, because she was a woman who loved too much, it was easiest for her to look. Throughout this book we will explore what loving too much is, why we do it, where we learned it, and how to change our style of loving into a healthier way of relating. Let's look again at the characteristics of women who love too much, one by one this time. 1. Typically, you come from a dysfunctional home in which your emotional needs were not met. Perhaps the best way to approach understanding this characteristic is to begin with the second half of it first, in which your emotional needs were not met. Emotional needs does not refer only to your need for love and affection. Although that aspect is important, even more critical is the fact that your perceptions and feelings were largely ignored or denied rather than accepted and validated. An example: parents are fighting. Child feels afraid. Child asks mother, "Why are you mad at daddy?" Mother answers, "I'm not mad," while looking angry and troubled. Child now feels confused, more afraid, and says, "I heard you shouting." Mother replies angrily, "I told you I'm not mad, but I'm going to be if you keep this up." Child now feels fear, confusion, anger, and guilt. Her parent has implied that her perceptions are incorrect, but if that is true, where are these feelings of fear coming from? The child must now choose between knowing that she is right and that her parent has deliberately lied to her, or thinking that she is wrong in what she hears, sees, and feels. She will often settle for confusion, tuning out her perceptions so that she does not have to experience the discomfort of having them invalidated. This impairs a child's ability to trust herself and her perceptions, both in childhood and later in adulthood, especially in close relationships. Needs for affection may also be denied or insufficiently met. When parents are fighting with each other, or caught up in other kinds of struggles, there may be little time or attention left for the children in the family. This leaves a child hungry for love while not knowing how to trust it or accept it and feeling undeserving of it. Now for the first part of this characteristic, coming from a dysfunctional home. Dysfunctional homes are those in which one or more of the following occur: abuse of alcohol and/or other drugs prescribed or illicit, compulsive behaviors such as compulsive eating, working, cleaning, gambling, spending, dieting, exercising, and so on. These practices are addictive behaviors, as well as progressive disease processes. Among their many other harmful effects, they effectively disrupt and prevent honest contact and intimacy in a family. Battering of spouse and/or children. Inappropriate sexual behavior on the part of a parent toward a child, ranging from seductiveness to incest. Constant arguing and tension. Extended periods of time in which parents refuse to speak to each other. Parents who have conflicting attitudes or values or display contradictory behaviors that compete for their children's allegiance. Parents who are competitive with each other or with their children. A parent who cannot relate to others in the family and thus actively avoids them, while blaming them for this avoidance. Extreme rigidity about money, religion, work, use of time, displays of affection, sex, television, housework, sports, politics, and so on. Obsession with any of these can preclude contact and intimacy, because the emphasis is not on relating, but on following the rules. If one parent displays any of these kinds of behaviors or obsessions, it is damaging to a child. If both parents are caught up in any of these unhealthy practices, the results may be even more detrimental. Often parents practice complementary kinds of pathology. For instance, an alcoholic and a compulsive eater frequently will marry, and then each will struggle to control the other's addiction. Parents also often balance each other in unhealthy ways. When the smothering, overprotective mother is married to the angry and rejecting father, each parent is actually enabled by the other's behavior and attitudes to continue relating to the children in a destructive way. Dysfunctional families come in many styles and varieties, but they all share one effect they have on children. Growing up in them, these children are to some extent damaged in their ability to feel and relate. 2. Having received little real nurturing yourself, you try to fill this unmet need vicariously by becoming a caregiver, especially to men who appear in some way needy. Think about how children, especially little girls, behave when they are lacking the love and attention they want and need. While a little boy may become angry and act out with destructive behavior and fighting, more often a little girl will turn her attention to a favorite doll, rocking and soothing it, and at some level identifying with it. That little girl is engaged in a roundabout effort to receive the nurturing she needs. As adults, women who love too much do the same thing, perhaps only slightly more subtly. In general, we become caregivers in most, if not all, areas of our lives. Women from dysfunctional homes, and especially, I have observed, from alcoholic homes, are overrepresented in the helping professions, working as nurses, counselors, therapists, and social workers. We are drawn to those who are needy, compassionately identifying with their pain and seeking to relieve it in order to ameliorate our own. That the men who attract us most strongly are those who appear to be needy makes sense if we understand that it is our own wish to be loved and helped that is at the root of the attraction. A man who appeals to us need not necessarily be penniless or in ill health. Perhaps he is unable to relate well to others, are as cold and unaffectionate, are stubborn or selfish, are sulking or melancholy. Maybe he is a bit wild and irresponsible, or unable to make a commitment or be faithful. Or maybe he tells us he has never been able to love anyone. Depending on our own background, we will respond to different varieties of neediness. But respond we will, with the conviction that this man needs our help, our compassion, and our wisdom in order to improve his life. 3. Because you were never able to change your parents into the warm, loving caretakers you long for, you respond deeply to the familiar type of emotionally unavailable man whom you can again try to change through your love. Perhaps your struggle was with one parent, perhaps with both. But whatever was wrong or missing or painful in the past is what you are trying to make turn out right in the present. Now it begins to be apparent that something very unwholesome and self-defeating is going on. It would be fine if we brought all our sympathy, compassion, and understanding into relationships with healthy men with whom there was some hope of getting our own needs met. But we are not attracted to healthy men who could give us what we need. They seem boring to us. We are attracted to men who replicate for us the struggle we endured with our parents, when we tried to be good enough, loving enough, worthy enough, helpful enough, and smart enough to win the love, attention, and approval from those who could not give us what we needed, because of their own problems and preoccupations. Now we operate as though love, attention, and approval don't count unless we are able to extract them from a man who is also unable to readily give them to us because of his own problems and preoccupations. 4. Terrified of abandonment, you will do anything to keep a relationship from dissolving. Abandonment is a very strong word. It implies being left, possibly to die. Because we may not be able to survive alone. There is literal abandonment, and there is emotional abandonment. Every woman who loves too much has at least experienced profound emotional abandonment, with all the terror and emptiness that implies. As an adult, being left by a man who represents in so many ways those people who first abandoned us brings up all the terror. Again, of course, we would do anything to avoid feeling that way again. Which leads into the next characteristic. 5. Almost nothing is too much trouble, takes too much time, or is too expensive if it will help the man you are involved with. The theory behind all this helping is that if it works, the man will become everything you want and need him to be. Which means that you will win that struggle to gain what you've wanted so much for so long. So, while we are often frugal and even self-denying on our own behalf, we will go to any lengths to help him. Some of our efforts on his behalf include buying him clothes to improve his self-image, finding a therapist for him and begging him to go, financing expensive hobbies to help him use his time better, going through disruptive geographic relocations because he's not happy here, giving him half or all of our property and possessions so he won't feel inferior to us, providing him with a place to live so that he can feel secure, allowing him to abuse us emotionally because he was never allowed to express his feelings before, finding him a job. This is only a partial list of the ways we try to help. We rarely question the appropriateness of our actions on his behalf. In fact, we spend a great deal of time and energy trying to think up new approaches that might work better than those we've already tried. 6. Accustomed to lack of love in personal relationships, you are willing to wait, hope, and try harder to please. If another person with a different kind of history found herself in our circumstances, she would be able to say, "This feels awful. I'm not going to continue to do this anymore." But we assume that if it isn't working and we aren't happy, then somehow we haven't done enough yet. We see every nuance of behavior as perhaps indicating that our partner is finally changing. We live on hope that tomorrow will be different. Waiting for him to change is actually more comfortable than changing ourselves and our own lives. 7. You are willing to take far more than 50% of the responsibility, guilt, and blame in any relationship. Often those of us from dysfunctional homes had parents who were irresponsible, childish, and weak. We grew up fast and became pseudo-adults long before we were ready for the burdens that role carried. But we were also pleased with the power that was conferred upon us by our families and others. Now, as adults, we believe it is up to us to make our relationships work, and we often team up with irresponsible, blaming partners who contribute to our sense that it really is all up to us. We are experts at carrying the burden. 8. Your self-esteem is critically low, and deep inside you do not believe you deserve to be happy. Rather, you believe you must earn the right to enjoy life. If our parents cannot find us worthy of their love and attention, how can we believe that we really are fine, good people? Very few women who love too much have a conviction, at the core of their being, that they deserve to love and be loved simply because they exist. We believe instead that we harbor terrible faults or flaws and that we must do good works in order to make up for this. We live in guilt that we have these shortcomings and in fear of being found out. We work very, very hard at trying to appear to be good, because we don't believe we are. 9. You have a desperate need to control your men and your relationships, having experienced little security in childhood. You mask your efforts to control people and situations as being helpful. Living in any of the more chaotic types of dysfunctional families, such as an alcoholic, violent, or incestuous one, a child will inevitably feel panic at the family's loss of control. The people on whom she depends are not there for her, because they are too sick to protect her. In fact, that family is often a source of threat and harm rather than the source of security and protection she needs. Because this kind of experience is so overwhelming, so devastating, those of us who have suffered in this way seek to turn the tables, so to speak. By being strong and helpful to others, we protect ourselves from the panic that comes from being at another's mercy. We need to be with people whom we can help in order to feel safe and in control. 10. In a relationship, you are much more in touch with your dream of how it could be than with the reality of your situation. When we love too much, we live in a fantasy world, where the man with whom we are so unhappy or so dissatisfied is transformed into what we are sure he can become, indeed will become, with our help. Because we know very little about being happy in a relationship and have very little experience with having someone we care for meet our emotional needs, that dream world is the closest we dare come to having what we want. If we already had a man who was everything we wanted, what would he need us for? And all that talent and compulsion for helping would have nowhere to operate. A major part of our identity would be out of a job. So we choose a man who is not what we want, and we dream on. 11. You are addicted to men and to emotional pain. In the words of Stanton Peele, author of Love and Addiction, an addictive experience is one which absorbs a person's consciousness, and as with analgesics, relieves their sense of anxiety and pain. There's perhaps nothing quite as good for absorbing our consciousness as a love relationship of a certain type. An addictive relationship is characterized by a desire for another person's reassuring presence. The second criterion is that it detracts from a person's ability to pay attention to and deal with other aspects of her life. We use our obsession with the men we love to avoid our pain, emptiness, fear, and anger. We use our relationships as drugs to avoid experiencing what we would feel if we held still with ourselves. The more painful our interactions with our man, the greater the distraction he provides us. A truly awful relationship simply serves the same function for us as a very strong drug. Without a man on whom to focus, we go into withdrawal, often with many of the same physical and emotional symptoms of that state that accompany actual drug withdrawal: nausea, sweating, chills, shaking, pacing, obsessive thinking, depression, inability to sleep, panic, and anxiety attacks. In an effort to relieve these symptoms, we return to our last partner or desperately seek a new one. 12. You may be predisposed biochemically as well as emotionally to abusing drugs, alcohol, and/or certain foods, usually sugary ones. The above applies especially to the many women who love too much who are daughters of substance abusers. All women who love too much carry the emotional backlog of experiences that could lead them to abuse mind-altering substances in order to escape their feelings. But children of addictive parents also tend to inherit a genetic predisposition to developing their own addictions. It may be because refined sugar is nearly identical in molecular structure to ethyl alcohol that so many daughters of alcoholics develop an addiction to it and become compulsive eaters. Refined sugar is not a food but a drug. It has no food value, only empty calories. It can dramatically alter brain chemistry, and is a highly addicting substance for many people. 13. By being drawn to people with problems that need fixing, or by being enmeshed in situations that are chaotic, uncertain, and emotionally painful, you keep from focusing on your responsibility to yourself. While we are very good at intuiting what someone else feels or figuring out what someone else needs or should do, we are not in touch with our own feelings and are unable to make wise decisions about important aspects of our lives that trouble us. We often do not really know who we are, and being embroiled in dramatic problems keeps us from having to hold still and find out. None of this is to say that we may not emote. We may cry and scream and weep and wail, but we are not able to use our emotions to guide us in making the necessary and important choices in our life. 14. You may have a tendency toward episodes of depression, which you try to forestall through the excitement provided by an unstable relationship. An example: one of my clients, who had a history of depression and was married to an alcoholic, likened living with him to having a car accident every day. The terrific ups and downs, the surprises, the maneuvers, the unpredictability and instability of the relationship cumulatively presented a constant and daily shock to her system. If you've ever had a car accident in which you weren't seriously injured, you may have experienced a definite up feeling the day or so following the event. This is because your body had undergone an extreme shock, and adrenaline was suddenly available in unusually high amounts. This adrenaline accounts for the high. If you are someone who struggles with depression, you will unconsciously seek situations that keep you stirred up, much like the car accident or the marriage to an alcoholic, so that you stay too high to feel low. Depression, alcoholism, and eating disorders are closely related and seem to be genetically linked. Most anorexics with whom I have worked, for instance, had two alcoholic parents, and many of my women clients with problems of depression had at least one alcoholic parent. If you are someone who came from an alcoholic family, you are likely, on 2 counts, to have problems with depression, because of your past and because of your genetic inheritances. Ironically, the excitement of a relationship with someone with that disease may strongly appeal to you. 15. You are not attracted to men who are kind, stable, reliable, and interested in you. You find such nice men boring. We find the unstable man exciting, the unreliable man challenging, the unpredictable man romantic, the immature man charming, the moody man mysterious. The angry man needs our understanding. The unhappy man needs our comforting. The inadequate man needs our encouragement, and the cold man needs our warmth. But we cannot fix a man who is fine just as he is, and if he is kind and cares for us, then we can't suffer, either. Unfortunately, if we can't love a man too much, we usually can't love him at all. In the chapters that follow, each of the women you will meet has, like Jill, a story to tell about loving too much. Through their stories, perhaps you will be helped to understand the patterns of your own life more clearly. Then you will also be able to employ the tools given toward the end of the book to change those patterns into a new configuration of self-fulfillment, love, and joy. This is my wish for you.